And that's another thing that I hear from colleagues, right? Sometimes marketing doesn't have a seat at the table, or if they have a seat, they're really not that influential. I have to say, and it goes back to the CMO we had at the time doing this, Deborah Conrad. When she started as the CMO, she came out and she said, I am going to be in the business meetings with a gentleman by the name of Stu Pan, who had moved on after this, moved on to HP, and he still has a great career. I think he's at Grok right now, but or on the board. A wonderful person, from a really super smart from a business side. And she said, I'm going to hold hands, quote unquote, with Stu, and we're going to be in meetings together. So I'm going to have marketing in those meetings, and I'm going to have Stu in our marketing meetings. So that way we had this trust, respect, and Stu knew that Deborah understood what needed to be done for the business, right? Stu got to understand a lot more on the marketing side about what marketers can and can't do, right? And there's a lot of times, you all know this, right? Marketing can't do everything, right? And we have to choose our battles, so to speak, right? Pick which is really most important. So I think that was just really critical to the success, and it really filtered down through the entire marketing organization, whether that, from a brand perspective, if you were doing demand gen, right? The agency side, that, hey, the business side is extremely important and you have to know this. And I think that I don't know if I see that a lot in a lot of companies. Sometimes it's a throw it over the wall. Here's our strategy. And then the marketing people go off. It's a black box. They come back with, well, here's what we came up with. And sometimes the business unit goes, oh, okay, that's great. Or sometimes they'll come back and go, no, that's not great at all. Right? That's not what we're looking for. Right. Having them part of those conversations as you go through is difficult, is challenging. And by the way, when I say they were in every conversation, right, we didn't have a business person in every branding and marketing conversation. It's just not a good use of resources. But they were there a whole heck of a lot than they were previously, where, quite frankly, and this is what I say, if you don't know the business people in your organization who's doing the P&L, wherever it may reside, if you don't know their names and have a relationship with them as a marketer, you're really missing out, right? You're really not doing your job, or doing your job as well as it could be. So I think, I
think that's a great point, Merlin. And one of the things is we have to actually, this is almost kind of like an APB or a public service announcement for anyone who's listening. Do not wait for permission, and do not wait to be invited to a meeting. You're both adults and you're both employed by this company. Reach out to an individual in a different business unit, reach out to someone and introduce yourself. And, I think that's more important than ever. And I have to say, if I hadn't done that at a couple companies I've worked for, I would have been operating with about 25% of the knowledge, which I had gleaned just in an orientation process that lasted all of, 4 days. And you have to make it your business to introduce yourself and ask questions and be humble and say, I'm not here to sound smart. I'm actually here to listen and ask you some questions, because I can turn around and do a heck of a lot more for this company. So, did you find that was part of the culture, Merlin, or did you have to march yourself in there and kind of just create those relationships, or what can people learn from?
So the relationships did not exist. Okay. In fact, I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't know who the people were. I didn't know them. And I came from a business unit role, and even in that business unit role, and again, I work for a large multinational company, right? So there's many different groups, and it's very easy to get very siloed, and probably many of your listeners maybe work in that same thing. But even if they don't, I still see silos happening even in the smaller or medium-sized companies, where you don't know what Joe's doing over there, right? Or you may not even know Joe. Or Susie, or you name it. And I think for me, I didn't know these people, and I didn't know what they did, and I didn't know to the degree what was really important to them. And I have to say, Intel was very good with people being open and at least allowing you to have that conversation initially, like, okay, here's how I think I can add value. This is why it's important for us to have this relationship. Now, again, I also say, at Intel, we had Deborah and Stu, right, coming together and saying, hey, this is important. You should make this happen. That opened up a lot of doors, right? And I think the lesson there is you need the exec buy-in, right, to make things happen. But I love how, as you said, if you don't know, don't ask permission. Just go up and start to talk to these people. And by the way, a lot of them want to know how marketing works, because marketing to many folks and brand is a black box, and they don't understand. They're like, wait a minute, how long does it take? Wait a minute, you have an agency? What does the agency do again?
Exactly.
What? Right? So they're curious too.
Yeah, they are.
So I think that also helped, but it took a while. And I have to say, we ended up with a great relationship with these people where we were always together. So I had a business counterpart and then a business unit person. So when I say business, it was the P&L person and the business unit person and myself. And we kind of had this little troika of just everybody knew, like, we were always together. We always were in these meetings, right? We always had kind of our backs in these meetings, say, oh, that won't work on the product side, right? Or, they'd say, oh, I don't think that's going to work on the marketing side. So it's really important to develop those. And by the way, I think you'll have not just a better career, but you'll just have a better understanding. And I think your job will be much more enjoyable to knowing all that. I'm an inherently curious person, so I love to know all these other things. But even if you're not, just better understanding and be able to talk their language helps tremendously.
So I know you said that there were people opening doors for you, but how did you start to develop some of these relationships? Were you just calling someone or emailing? How did you, any like practical, take us like back in time, like, okay, there's these three people. How did you actually do it to get that ball rolling? So
this is going to sound very basic, but it was, can I see the org chart of your organization? And can someone sit and go through this organization so I understand what people do, and then figure out, okay, out of those folks, who do I need to set up a one-on-one with, right? And just or a coffee, because people are very busy. So sometimes they're like, wait a minute, I don't know why I need to even talk to you, Mr. Marketing Branding person. Why should I spend any time, right? So it was getting that initial, hey, here's who I am. Let me tell you what I do and how I think I can help you. But also just the curiosity of, what do you do? Because then I can adjust what we do. But it was as simple as, can I please have the org chart? And again, this is for a company the size of Intel, where, at that point we had 110,000 employees or 100,000 employees, right? You don't know all the different people making all the decisions.
No, I love that, Merlin.
How would you explain then what you did and what your role was in a way that, like, what worked and maybe what didn't?
I think it just comes down to, so what worked? What worked was showing a genuine interest in what they do and understanding their KPIs, right? Or how they are viewed as a success. So that's one. And then two, being able to, and it doesn't have to all be in the same meeting, right? It doesn't all have to happen within 20 minutes over a coffee, but being able to have that second conversation of, hey, here's what I do, and here's how I think I can help. What do you think about that? And drawing them into that conversation. So I think that is what works as a perspective. And then I would also say that's on the business side. From a product side, you have to, and again, I'm talking about from a technology product, you have to understand how the technology works, at least at a basic level, right? So there's one thing where if you're a marketer and, we had a lot of technology, a lot of features, and some of the folks just didn't want to learn the ins and outs of how this works and how this doesn't. By the way, how do you create a message that works if you don't really understand what it does? So you have to have that background. And by the way, there were many people who didn't want to do that. Okay. I can only just say to all the listeners here, right? If you're in a technology world or you're in any kind of world, really try to understand the product that you're delivering, even if it's not your skill set, right? If you're not a technology person, if you're not an engineer, right? You do need to understand at a basic level. So I think that having that background from a business unit perspective and being able then to talk about the roadmap. Oh, this person understands our roadmap and understands what we're going to be able to do and not do, right? That helps you from a business unit side. And usually roadmaps are published in companies, right? So everybody has access to them. Doing a little bit of homework up front so you're much more fluent and can talk about, because Mary, if you're talking to a business unit person, yes, there's a product that you're getting out the door that's launching or has just launched, but they're probably already thinking about 6 months, 9 months, a year, sometimes 3 years ahead, right? So you can do that, what I call background work, to go, hey, I'm seeing this evolution of the roadmap. You're going here. Tell me about the strategy. Why are we doing that, right? Because then you can say, hey, in your next conversation, well, then from a brand perspective, I may ignore what we're doing over the next 6 months because I really want to position us in a way that's going to map what you're doing in 9 months or a year or 3 years, right? Does that make sense to you, right? And having that conversation. So hopefully that's helpful. What doesn't work? You can't be a bull in a china shop, right? You can't come in as, you guys don't know what you're doing, or brand can help and save the world, or marketing will do everything there. But just coming in with just that curiosity and from a knowledge base that you can do beforehand, I think is really helpful.